So when we come back to the posture, just feel it, the difference between what you want to do, which is sort of attend to this space in front by looking down on it, and what the world is wanting you to do, which is actually participate by letting this swing forward. So there's a sense that the three centers, the dantian, the heart, and the head, are sort of looking up. So you're very much in the middle when you're in correct posture, rather than behind when your bum is sticking out a little bit. So you're an integral part of the space you inhabit. You're not the ruler of the space in front of you. Just feel that space. So it's very much like a cardioid. Remember a cardioid in mathematics? So there's like the origin, the center, and then from there you get this like a heart, but it comes down and just joins up smoothly at the bottom rather than in the point. Yeah. So from your back, you've got this energy coming out of your spine. The spine is in the middle, and then round to the front. And that's basically what ward off is. When you're like this, you're basically making a cardioid. So there's a sense of sort of a mass of energy just behind your shoulder blades. And then once you're in correct position, just let gravity stream through you. It's like you're in the shower, the water's cascading onto your head and just dripping all around you. Just let the shoulders slowly sink. So the shoulders feel like they're sinking into these bones, the hip bones. And the hip bones are very much connecting with the feet, through the legs, obviously. And just feel the tail. And as soon as you arch the lower back in order to send the tail backwards rather than down, it's just projecting an opinion basically into your head. It's sending energy up and encouraging you to become egocentric. Yeah? So that's what we're trying to withdraw. Just trying to let the sacrum just hang down in a neutral position. And then that will just suck all of this activity in, and you'll then be able to squeeze it out of your back and down your arms and legs and these eye limbs that John was really interested in. Okay, now let's just turn it. So about that central axis, but really feel the shoulders stacking into the hips. So it's the hips that are turning very much, not the shoulders. The shoulders are just with the hips. It's amazing how difficult people find this. So to move their body, they have to move their head and their shoulders. They can't move the body just from the hips. And that's what we're just trying to do. So it's as though someone is standing behind you and they're actually moving your hips, and you're trying not to help them. You're trying to let them do all the work. Yeah, so this is your legs working in order to move your hips. Your legs are just like a stand-in for that other person. And just keep it relaxed. So the idea is that the movement is relaxing us even more. It's sort of allowing something to break up and crumble so that it can just fall away. Because what we want to feel is the leg doing the work. We want to feel, how is the leg producing this turn? So what's actually happening is, as I to turn myself back to the front, this leg pushes. Now, if this leg only pushed, then it would move me in this direction largely. So what this leg does is brace in order so that this push here becomes a turn rather than the movement into this leg. Yeah. So that's basically what's happening. You're using both legs together. One to produce a movement and one to stop a movement. Yeah. And we just want to feel that. Yeah, so when the two legs are operating together, we want to feel how each one is working individually so that we can just split it up a little bit. And then it's just freer. It's like the machine just works that much better because it's not all locked up. Yeah, so feel as you push here, this leg is actually just stopping this hip so that this push can bring this hip round. Yeah. We're just trying to look at things in real detail. So that, you know, obviously it requires a mind that is relatively quiet, that can just watch. So what in meditation we call an undistractable mind. And with each repetition, it just relaxes a bit more. So you can just get around a tiny bit further. And just feel the two legs. This leg is now pushing in that direction, and this leg is having to push in this direction to produce this turn. Yeah. Yeah. So what we want is as we turn to the side like this, it relaxes. It doesn't twist up and get tense. Yeah, so I get to this point, and then if I just relax, it will just take me around a bit more. It means that I'm sort of locked in the posture. I'm not single weighted. I can't get 100% in the leg. Turn. So my two legs are pushed, and then I just sort of relax into them, and I can just go down a bit further, and it will take me round a little bit more. Got these two lesbians living next door. They have this little boy, and he's crying at the moment. Okay, now let's just bring it back to the front. And just feel it. And so when you work correctly in Tai Chi, in a sense, the work will make you feel more sort of wobbly, less stable. It's not, so the stability is something that comes from your quiet mind, not from you settling into this sort of immobile strength. So as when we've done this exercise, when we stand still, it should feel a little bit sort of And that's always a good sign. We tend to take it as a bad sign because we don't like it. Okay, and now let's just turn it. And the same thing, just feeling both legs working. They're sort of pushing against each other to produce that twist here. One leg, this leg pushing this way, this leg pushing this way. Yeah, so when you get them working together with that little bit of independence, like they've both got a little bit of say, a little bit of say in the matter, then it's like when you reach the edge, it's a different obstruction that's stopping you. It's not just a tightness in the hips and the waist. It's the real limit of this leg here. Just can't go any further. So just feel feel your back as you turn. It's almost like you're glancing over your shoulder. Yeah, so with energy, it's like we're trying to get a sense of something that we can't see, and something that if we try to look at it, it will actually scarper. It will disappear. And so, it has to be glanced, just fleetingly. So as you turn here and you glance over this shoulder, there's a sense of this sort of darkness looming behind you. Yeah. So the back energy, what John used to call the guardian. And the hand that goes behind is really reaching into that thick darkness. So in front of you, there's the visible, which is illuminated, otherwise you won't be able to see it. And behind you, there's the invisible, there's the darkness. And they're both aspects of you. There was an enlightened master who's dead now called Douglas Harding, and he wrote a really famous book. And his enlightenment was triggered by a self-portrait that he saw. And basically what it was not the man's likeness. It wasn't as though he was looking in the mirror and drawing a picture of himself. He was just drawing what he saw. Yeah? So the room, the objects in the room, but also his lower body, because when you're looking, you can see your legs and everything. And he, Douglas Harding suddenly had this moment of insight. We're not you. When you look in the mirror, that's not you. That's just something that's just your body. So he was saying, what you are is what you see. That is my world. My world is what my eyes take in. So for us, that is only part of our world. That's the ego-dominated world. The real world, the world we want to open up and start to inhabit, is the one behind us. It's the darkness. So the story of Plato's cave, the men who are chained to the back of the cave and they're just seeing these projections on the back of the cave. And then one of them escapes and finds a way out of the cave and sees this amazing vista. goes back, tells all his friends that what they're looking at is not reality. The reality is actually behind them. Yeah. And of course, they don't believe him. Okay, now let's bring it back to riding horse. Again, the most important thing is just getting this in position. So the sacrum, it's also like it's the ruthless center. So when you have it in the right position, you feel really sort of just ruthless. You couldn't give a fuck about anything, least of all other people. Yeah, and it's just really sort of unsentimental and just matter of fact. You're just a fact of nature, planted in the ground, sprouting this energy. So a mind that is really clear of any sort of trembly doubts or uncertainties or worries, basically. An anxious, free mind. And it's a mind that sort of just refuses to treat the world with kid gloves. It's sort of almost heavy-handed, yeah. Because it's not ashamed of itself. I mean, a lot of what passes for softness is just, self-abnegation. Oh, I don't want to hurt. So you're here. This is you. This is your space. It's very Israeli. The Israelis, they've got good roots. They're really planted, and they're fucked if they're going to let anyone move them. Yeah. And you can just feel as soon as this goes back and up, I become movable. Yeah, I've lost my root. Okay, now let's turn again, but now from the twisting of the foot. Yeah, so I just twist this foot this way a little bit, and it rolls me round. And then I twist this foot. Yeah, so it's really quite a lot different than just pushing with the legs. I mean, you are effectively pushing, but you're pushing with a twist. And it's a much more subtle engagement of both the ground and your own energy. There's something very coarse about just pushing. It's basically forceful, you just can't go away from it. And this, in a sense, is a way of just making the pushing less forceful by turning, because of course, as soon as you turn, you introduce a yielding element, because part of your circle is going forwards and part is going back. Yeah. And just really relaxing the sacrum. Whenever you do anything, really, it will tend to tense up the sacral area and push the sacrum up and send your tail back. So you want the tail really dangling down. And just feel it. If you really want to keep that area relaxed, basically your mind has to open up a space. Your mind has to open up this space. So everything within that space can remain free of its neighbors a little bit. So if something gets tense here, which it needs to move, that tension doesn't get translated into the sacrum. It gets translated purely into movement. So, wow. So this idea of the mind not as instigator, but as container. You are the contained, and the mind is the container. So it's not the body containing you, it's the mind containing the body which contains you. And that big containing space is basically what we call compassion. What Jesus would have called love. So love is really just the big mind, it's the non-self mind. And that is God. I mean, the self mind, the ego mind, that's our invention. That's the source of all evil. God knows no evil, but we do. We create it. So all evil stems from ego, stems from selfishness. It's like my old lady whose whole family was killed in the Holocaust. Well, her parents. How can I believe in God after what happened? For me, it's like nothing to do with God. I mean, God's quite a weak force. God can be overridden by humans whenever. God is just this prevailing background of love and compassion. And we can always step in and decide to be an arsehole. And maybe we'll get punished one day. Maybe our karma will catch up with us. But for the moment, it's always possible to override the divine. This is why the work is so difficult. So God is not almighty. God is pathetically weak. But Coltrane said, you are so gentle, I barely feel you, yet you are my everything. And just feel it. As you soften and become more sort of yielding, it will naturally become the pulling foot, this foot pulling round like this that draws me round. So we want to feel yielding as being the operation of love and compassion, of that compassionate space. If I want to push out of something, I have to push from like a concentrated place. And that's just basically ego. Ego is me. I am a thing. It's my objectness. And compassion is just the space that contains that. So when I'm twisting the foot this way, I'm creating like the boundary of that compassionate space, and it will pull me round. We just want to feel how both are necessary, but the one we're useless at is the compassionate one. It's this one. We can all hug when we decide to hug, but to actually hug every moment, is a tall order. Yeah? So this foot twists this way to start me coming out, and then this foot twists this way, and that completes my movement into this leg, and then this leg twists this way, pushes me out of the leg, and then this leg twists this way to pull me into it. So we don't want this sense of falling into the leg. We want the sense that we're pulling ourselves into the leg. We're pushing ourselves out of the leg, and then we're pulling ourselves into it. So it has to be active. Otherwise, it's just a bit slow and the energy sort of fizzles out. So here, you just feel it coming from two different places. This is coming from the center. This is coming from the circumference. So 1 and 2. Yeah, and which one is more difficult? It's this, it's the yielding bit, because we're just not used to, as egocentric animals, well, it's an insult to animals, as egocentric beings, we're not used to compassion. We're not used to really embracing and swallowing. Ooh. So this is really opening up in order to embrace as big a space as possible. And just feel how it's bringing that energy from the back, that dark energy behind you that looms right over you. It's big. It actually channels it through your arms. And some of it is now here. Yeah. And I twist this. So I'm twisting this foot this way to roll this hip around. And then I twist the foot this way to come out of the leg. And then I twist this foot this way. And it really is two different minds, almost two different bodies, yeah. So this is really sort of coming from a tense, everything's tight and then this everything has to suddenly open up to activate the yielding twist. So you have to almost be in possession of two bodies. So here, and then this is really open. So this is closed but exploding outward, and then this is open but imploding. It's everything sort of coming in. Okay. So let's just bring it back. Again, just forget what's gone before and just come back to the sacrum in the right place. Okay, now let's just try a little bit of breathing. So just feel the continuity. Mind continuous. So when you connect to the breathing, you become part of a continuum. And the continuum is completely smooth. So between any 2 points, you can always iterate a third point. So it's totally smooth. This is really lovely. And then how does it change direction? You have to feel, I have to feel the inward force before it starts moving inward. It's the only way I can keep that change smooth. So here the hands are going out, but I'm feeling that force that's trying to pull them in. And then I just slowly give way to it and let it pull me in. Now the hands are coming in. I feel the force that's pushing them apart. And then slowly I just release into it. So it's just these two forces that are just overlapping all the time. We don't want to make the change stop. And this is how we would like to feel the breathing with our lungs. Like there's a big long in-breath that's happening all the time, the big long out-breath that's happening all the time. And one just slips into the foreground as the other one goes back into the background, and then the other one comes forwards. So there's one long in-breath. I'm connecting to the in-breath of the universe, and then I allow the out-breath to come in. So it's not stop and start. There's continuity everywhere. And then just feel it in the spine. So here the spine is really extending, your tail is unraveling, your head is going back a little bit. So the spine is getting as long as it can. And then here the belly starts working a little bit and it flexes up, it sort of curls up a little bit. So the important bits like the sacrum, can I just really relax the sacrum into this extension? And then here, trying not to tense the sacrum. Don't bunch the tail up. Don't tighten your arsehole. And just feel the change from in-breath to out-breath and the other way around. Yeah, so normally there'd be like a stop there. It would sort of stop and then start. So there'd be a drop in energy, if you like. So we want to feel it as an intensity. There's a real intensity here as it forces the change in direction. So it's almost like your eyes bulge. Your spirit comes into the equation, basically. So it gets really intense. It slows down almost to a stop, but the energy is getting much more intense. Because you've suddenly got these conflicts between the in-breath and the out-breath. Who's going to win? Who's going to win the battle? And we're just trying to really stretch out that moment. Just feel it stopping moving, but actually everything is moving. Everything is still intensifying, and then suddenly there's a slight release, and that allows it to change direction. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay. And now just bring it back. So get the sacrum in the middle of the circle again. And just feel that sort of pump. So it doesn't need to correspond to your actual breathing. It's more like what the craniosacral therapist would call the cranial pump. So the skull, the spine, and the sacrum is like a closed system, and within it there's a fluid that sort of pumps slowly, slightly slower than your breathing. And so when you feel that sort of throb, this sort of slow throb, like you're throbbing with the universe, that's basically your craniosacral system. So the skull expands a little bit, and then it will naturally contract and then expand again. So the craniosacral therapists, they just listen to that. They just put their hands on your skull and just listen to the rhythm. And then they can scan your body, because it's not just your craniosacral system that is pumping. The whole fascia, all the fascia of the body is related, it's connected to that system. So by scanning the body, they can feel where there are things wrong. And when something is wrong, it's indicated by irregularity. Either there's no rhythm, or the rhythm is very sort of military. So a real rhythm will have this real sort of almost like a random element, like Brownian motion. This real sort of could go in any direction at any time. So as soon as there's regularity, it indicates a pathology. The same in life, really. I mean, a habit is a pathology, really. Something wrong. You've stopped listening. Okay, and now let's just step. So just using the stepping leg to move yourself. So I'm going to pull myself into the leg, and then I'll just naturally bounce out. So it's like my toes catch onto something and pull me forward, and then my heel squeezes into the ground to move me back. And just letting it pause. Yeah, so before you put your weight in the foot, just pause, get the toes down, pause, and then really make sure it's the leg that's pulling you. It's not the momentum your body has collected from the previous thing. So I pause, and then this just springs me back, and I pause, especially on the backward step, because that tends to be where we get clumsy. Yeah, so we're just attending to the one leg, the leg that's doing all the work, all the moving. So, and then just, once you've got it set up, just bring your mind to the leg that's supporting. Yeah, so for the legs to be happy, they need to get attention. Yeah. So if your mind is not with them in some sort of way, they'll be unhappy, and then you will be unhappy. You know, it says in the classics, if there's something wrong, look to the lower body. Yeah, so if someone's depressed, it's because their upper body is just overloading these sad legs. So we want to feel that this leg, it has to have some sort of, I need to be looking at it in order for it to take my weight. Because if I just force it to sort of support me, my weight will always rest on the hip. I want it to pass through and get onto into the ground. Yeah. So if this leg has to receive me properly, there has to be an element of pulling in it. It has to be opening up as I come onto it. Otherwise, I won't go through it. So here, yeah, so one leg is pushing, but the other leg has to be actively and willingly receiving what the pushing leg is getting rid of. Otherwise, there'll be a little bit of conflict. So here, wow. So you have to have two minds, one mind attending to one side of the body and the other mind attending to the other. And they're always doing opposite things. The spirit hates symmetry. If you're symmetrical in any way, you're eradicating spirit. So I pull into this leg, and then I'm pushing with this leg, but this leg has to be receiving that, it has to be pulling. If one leg is actively pushing, the other leg has to be actively pulling. And just feel your wings, feel your angel's wings. So whenever you pull, in other words, whenever you yield, you sprout wings. And you can feel them in the shoulder blades, in the back of the head, and on the sacroiliacs. Yeah. Like to start with, they're like baby wings, like you're just a little cherub to start with. But then they get bigger, as John said. So we all start as fledgling angels. So someone once said, the biggest tragedy in life is to live it and not become a saint, given that we all have the possibility of becoming saints. But here it's like the biggest tragedy then is not to become an angel. So it's like an angel no longer has free will. The angel is just the instrument of the divine. He just serves. Okay, now let's just bring it, before we do the other side, let's just bring it back. And just feel what that exercise has brought in. Because suddenly from being just stuck in a position, we were moving, we were single weighted and moving feet gently. So just feel what that's brought in. Again, it should bring in like an instability. Like there's just all this sort of movement in the feet and the legs. And so you have to be extra quiet to let it settle into some sort of stillness. So when you feel the wrong sort of strength, that sort of blockish, bullish strength that men have so much, especially here, there should be something in you that's really disgusted. Okay, now let's just try the other foot. So again, just pausing before you go into the foot, almost like you're really listening for the right moment here. So I put my toes down so gently, and then everything's okay. So I just slowly pull into the leg, and then the leg loads, and so it pushes me. I just bounce out of it like a spring. And then this goes down, and I don't want to go into it yet. And then my toes say, okay, everything's okay. And I can move into it. So you're feeling the ground. So it's like moving like a hunter. You know, you don't want to step on a twig that's going to snap and make a noise and alert the animal, your quarry. You know, just feel that yield phase. That contains spirit. The push phase doesn't. It just contains ego. We think it contains spirit because it's very sort of this, yeah. But the spirit is already there. The spirit is actually being brought up by the yield, by this. And then when I spring out of that, the spirit's already gone somewhere else, yeah. That's why I pull. And just feel how all this pulling with the feet is actually rounding out the lower back. So as I pull with the foot, it's pulling me in that direction, but it's also sucking my spine down into the foot. And so it's really important for getting the legs to be part of the spine. So here I'm pulling my whole spine down here. So now my bottom of my spine is on the ground. And then here I pull, so this is pulling the spine under. Draw. And then just feeling just how obstructive and stupid the mind is. Yeah. So basically what the teacher does, he just gives you indications of what should be happening if you weren't being so resistant. Yeah. And so something should be happening, but it's not, is because your mind is putting up a resistance to it. And that's large, it's not normally like just this sort of stubbornness. It's more like you're just holding on to an image that's no longer relevant. Yeah? And that's like an image of solidity. And what we want to replace it by is a feeling of fluidity. You know, so all our images tend to be set pictures. So we just want to get rid of that. And it's just a matter of just being honest then. Yeah. Am I really balanced, or do I want to fall into this foot? And if you want to fall into it, it's because your other leg is protesting. So I should be able to put that down and yield into the leg, not fall into it. So, So let's bring it back. Again, the first thing you do is bring this into the right position, which is normally forwards of where you'd like it. And then just feel all the energy. Feel the legs just a bit more tingly. It's amazing how tense the legs are. And it's largely because they're so heavy, yeah. And to get energy to move a leg rather than force is actually really quite difficult. And that's what basically you need to do if you want to keep the legs relaxed in some sort of way as you're working. It's the energy that throws the foot into the position rather than you hoiking the leg up and placing it. So John's legs were relaxed, especially later on. Sometimes he'd say, let's do a bit of pressing, where we're sort of like this, pressing into each other, and he'd just disappear. He'd get so low. And I just feel these legs just sort of melting. Okay, let's just try now just a little bit of the heart Qigong. Yeah, so just remember that thing that Dogen said. Each moment lasts 0.065 of a second. So your movement proceeds through a whole series of moments. And so you're passing through these moments. Each one gives a little burst. So this is what I mean by no momentum. Don't let momentum gather. You're attending to each moment. Your mind is with the moments. I saw an old man doing Qigong yesterday in the park, and it just looked marvelous because he was so attentive to the movements he was making. It's really inspiring. Yeah. And you just want it to slip out of the mind and into the heart. So the mind knows and the heart believes. So the mind knows that there's all these moments because Dogen said it and we've read it and we believe it. But the mind doesn't really feel it because the mind can't feel. It's the heart that feels it. The heart feels the truth of it. And so if it's a truth, you don't have to produce it. You just have to reveal it. And you reveal it by letting the mind slip away. Because the mind will always doubt. The mind always has a better opinion. So that sort of objective scientific mind, the skeptical mind, they try not to let their minds come into the equation so that they don't affect what's happening. But of course, that objective skeptical mind is itself a hindrance. There has to be some element of imagination at play. So what happens is already evident in your imagination. Then you're not sure whether you've dreamt it or it's actually real. Yeah. So again, it's always ambiguous. Yeah. Yeah. So something is clear and obvious, then it's not interesting, and it's not true. It's definitely not true. It's trivial, as the scientists would say. Ooh. Okay, one more. And now let's just bring it to attention. Just straightening the legs, but always a little bit of a give. So when we straighten the legs, this always tends to go back a little bit. So we have to find a way of still letting the spine sink through the legs. You just want to feel what in my mind has to relax to allow my sacrum down through my legs. It won't just happen. So you need to touch that ruthless, no pity mind. So ruth is just an old English word that means pity. So ruthless means no pity. Like Castaneda said, all pity comes from self-pity. And all self-pity comes from self-image, comes from ego. And so we pity ourselves because we feel we deserve better. I'm entitled to a better life. Why aren't I getting it? So that's the bourgeois way. It's always ready to chuckle. Yeah. Yeah, so whatever's bothering you, you laugh it off. It's a beautiful phrase. You shrug it off by laughing it off. You laugh at it. Don Juan in Castaneda, used to say, our most important and valuable tool is laughter. Just feel there's something under your feet calling you. Yeah. The earth wants you to die and decompose and refertilize it. Yeah. You just want to feel that. And there's something up there that's calling you as well. So the divine, God, the heavens, whatever you want to call it, is calling that spirit out of your body. So you're no longer this, it's no longer trapped in this vessel. So they both want the same thing, really, the earth and the heavens. They want the separation of spirit and body. So we just want to feel that, because at some point that will be our reality. Okay, great.